Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Sahanavavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavijyankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vitvishavahay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitaamritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Amba Tvamanusandhadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Nitra Yena Tvaya Bharata Talya Purnaha Prajvalido Jnanamaya Pratipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamritaduhe Namaha. Sarvopanishadu Gavo Dogta Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsa Chanudamardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Bhishmadrona Tata Jayadrata Jala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalya Grahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharvyavachas Saroja Mamalam Geetartagantotkatam Nanakyanaka Kesaram Harikata Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatparairaharaha Pipiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayati girim yat kripatamaham bande paramananda madhavam yam brahma varunindra rudra marutaha tunvanti divyaistavaihi vede sanga padakramopanishade gayanti yam samagaha dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa Pashyanti yam yogino yasyantam na vidusura suragana devaya tasmai namaha devaya tasmai namaha devaya tasmai namaha.
Hari Om and happy Sri Krishna Jayanti for today to everyone. So nice that we are doing Bhagavad Gita recitation on Sri Krishna Jayanti. That's very nice. So Bhagavaan gave us 18 ways to perform tapas. 8 ways through the body, 5 ways through the speech, and 5 ways through the mind. And we can say 15 ways also if you take worship, which is the first one. That if you take as one, you can say 15 ways, otherwise 18 ways. Deva, Dvija, Guru, Pragya. So those if you take each one of them, then 18 ways, right? So, and he taught us how to perform this tapas in so many ways. And like we said earlier, tapas really does not have a proper English word translation. So all of these 18 aspects of tapas, they have English translation, and all of them together comprise tapas. And then he classified tapas as sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Sattvic tapas is that which is practiced with faith, utmost faith, steadfast in not desiring any fruit for the tapas that is being practiced. Rajasika tapas is practiced with the goal of getting something in return, goal of gaining respect, goal of gaining honor, and goal of attaining worship, and also with a level of dambhena, hypocrisy. And Bhagwan said that this kind of a tapas is unstable and transitory. It is very temporary. Tamasic tapas performed holding on to a delusion, not just having a delusion, but holding on to it and giving pain or torture to one's own body, mind, and intellect, or with the goal to cause trouble to others. That is tamasic tapas. When you actually perform tapas with an aim to trouble yourself or somebody else. And the nature of Danam was also discussed and Bhagwan taught us. And again, 3 kinds of Danam. Sattvika Danam, that is given with conviction, with firm belief, given without any expectation to receive anything in return, given at the right place, given at the right time, and given to the deserving. Rajasic Danam, given with the intent to receiving something in return, actually multiplied. So if you give something, getting more than what you've given. Looking for fruit in the future also, not just now, but probably now, probably in the future, but sometime I should get something. Future includes next janma. And also that which is given reluctantly. That is Rajasik Danam. And Tamasika Danam is given at a wrong place, at a wrong time, to the unworthy, or Danam that is given without any respect, or what is given with an insult. These are Tamasic Danam. See, we also saw that all human activities can be classified as ahara, which is food that is undertaken for maintenance of the body, not for sensual indulgence, for the maintenance of the body. Yajna, that maintenance of the body is crucial. That is ahara. We can't call every food that we consume as ahara. Food that is undertaken for the maintenance of the body. Yajna, work that is performed with dedication and sacrifice. Not any and every work that we do. That we do with shraddha, and that we do with a level of giving up something else. That is yajna. Dana, giving to other elements of creation and to society. And we just saw what are the elements that make it dana, right? Basically having sattvika dana. And tapas, or intelligent methods of self-control. The 18 ways that Bhagavan has taught us for self-control, for tapas. And when these are undertaken with shraddha, with faith, then it helps a person progress on the spiritual path. That is why this is all crucial. If the goal is not to progress on the spiritual path, we can ignore all of this. And a human being who is able to recognize one's own nature and understand one's own nature and the nature of one's shraddha, which means whether my nature is predominantly sattvika, rajasika, tamasika, and whether the nature of my shraddha is predominantly sattvika, rajasika, or tamasika. One who is able to understand this is then able to move from tamasic and rajasic towards sattvic. both in terms of one's nature and in terms of one's Shraddha. So ultimately, the goal is to get to Sattvika Shraddha. Now, Bhagavan touches upon something which is very interesting. How to give perfection to what we do. How to give perfection to our activities defined as Yajna, Tapas and Daana. And of course, these are overarching umbrella activities. Almost all that we do can get covered under these three major definitions of what we do. And it's a great lesson from Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself in engineering perfection. And on this occasion of Sri Krishna Jayanti, let's go through that. So we start with verse 23.
Om Tat Saditi Nirdeshaha
Om Tat Saditi Nirdeshaha
Brahmanastrividasmritaha
Brahmanastrividasmritaha
Brahmanastena Vedascha
Brahmanastena Vedascha
Yajnascha Vihita Pura.
Yajnascha Vihita Pura.
Om Tat Saditi Nirdeshaha Brahmanastravidasmritaha Brahmanastena Vedascha Yajnascha Vihita Pura.
Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat is Om Tat Sat. And Bhagavan says Mritaha. This Mritaha means denotes. Om Tat Sat denotes iti, the, Trividaha, threefold, Nirdeshaha, designation or title, Brahmana, of Brahman. Tena, by that, Vihitaha, were ordained, were created. Brahmanas, the Brahmanas are the knowers of Brahman. We have seen that earlier. Brahmani charati iti brahmachari, that is the follower of Brahman is brahmachari. Brahmani jnati it is iti brahmana. Brahmana is whoever knows the Brahman, whoever has recognized and known the self, that is Brahmana. So from that were created the Brahmanas, Vedas, the Vedas, cha and Yajna, the Yajnas. Pura, earlier in ancient times, at the time when creation began. So Bhagavan says Om Tat Sat denotes the threefold designation of Brahman. And by that were ordained or created the knowers of the Brahman, the Vedas and the Yajnas in the past, earlier in ancient times. Nirdeshaha. So Bhagavan says Nirdeshaha. Nirdesha means by which something is called. Like we have titles, designations. So by which something is called. That is Nirdeshaha. And Bhagavan says that he, Brahman, the Supreme Brahman, is called as Om Tat Sat. Is indicated by, designated as, denoted by the term Om Tat Sat. That is what Om Tat Sat means. And then he continues that by this term Om Tat Sat, by that were created the Brahmanas, the Vedas and the Yajnas. See, all of creation came through from Bhagavan. But Bhagavan is pointing out three elements of creation. Why is that? See, we spoke about why Bhagavan is going to let us know, tell us how to engineer excellence. He is showing that by the excellence in creation itself. In creation, these three elements are considered to be the excellent aspects of creation, the perfect aspect of creation. The perfect aspect of creations are those who know the Brahman, those who know the Creator are obviously the perfect aspects of creation. The Vedas, because the Vedas are the ones, or the scriptures. If you want to widen the horizon, you can include all scriptures that humanity knows of, right? All of the scriptures teach us how to live our life. They ordain to us in terms of how to live. And Yajnas, Yajna we saw earlier, devoted action that also involves a little bit of giving up. That is Yajna. These are the perfect elements of creation, Bhagavan says. And using the power of Om Tat Sat, these perfect elements of creation came about. So just think about it. If the perfect elements of creation itself came through Om Tat Sat, how much of perfection we can achieve through Om Tat Sat. in our pursuit, when we perform yajna, when we perform dana, when we perform tapa, with the help of Om Tat Sat, with that power of Om Tat Sat, we can achieve perfection. Also, there's one more interpretation. In the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, Nirdeshaha is that by which performance of which any defects that may be there in the ritual can be removed. So we do, in software technology or in manufacturing, there is a process of quality assurance, right? So any defect that has been there while making something, that is removed through quality assurance. Similarly, in the Vedas, Nirdeshaha is that by which you remove if there are any defects. And if you follow a specific process, then the defect itself will not come in. That is Nirdeshaha. So every action has a result or a fruit. Correct? We all know that. We have studied that enough, that all actions have result or fruit. The quality, see, I'm just trying to explain this aspect that Bhagavaan has just taught us. The quality of the result, quality of the outcome of our action, that depends not just on what is just being done. It depends also on the quality of intent or the thought that is behind that action. The better the intent, the better the quality. The firmer the intent, the better the quality. So just the doing does not determine the quality of the result. The thought behind the doing determines the quality of the result. And we have seen this enough. We also experience this enough in our day-to-day life, right? So the purity of the mind is the outcome of the nature of the human being. That also we have seen. Satvika nature, Rajasika nature, Tamasika nature. So depending on the nature of the person, the mind has level of disturbance or has no disturbance at all, right? Basically, a mind that is undisturbed is at peace. That is the pure mind. So based on the nature of the person, if the person is tamasic or rajasic, more the disturbance in the person's mind, and more the sattvika aspect of the mind, calmer and purer is the mind. Now, smritaha, Bhagwan uses the word smritaha. Smritaha also means remembrance. By the remembrance of the name or the title or the designation for Bhagwan, which is Om Tat Sat, by that remembrance, the mind surely becomes purer. Remembering the higher ideal, remembering the supreme while performing work leads to identification with the higher ideal. Identification with the higher ideal leads to detachment with your ego. And detachment with the ego leads to performance of selfless activity. When there is no ego, then the activity is not selfish. It is selfless activity. So identifying, remembering the higher ideal, identifying it, removing the identification with the ego, selfless activity. That in turn leads to perfect or perfection in quality of action. And then obviously the perfection in quality of action leads to a perfect result. See how beautiful this is. And we have seen this earlier also. Where Bhagwan has said earlier, you choose your higher ideal. You choose what you want to follow. I will manifest in that higher ideal of yours. So we can choose whatever. My favorite, whenever this has come up multiple times in Bhagavad Gita. If Roger Federer, he doesn't think about the particular shot he's playing. He doesn't think about the tournament cup that is out there in the stand. He plays for the game of tennis. And when you play for the higher ideal, Bhagwan manifests in that higher ideal, producing excellence in action, or rather quality in action, resulting in excellence in action, resulting in excellence in result. Identification with one's ego leads to stress of performance or stress in performance or stress of non-performance. So you'll always be thinking, I'm doing great, there is a stress in that, okay? And when you think I'm not doing great, there is a higher amount of stress in that. So identification with one's ego leads to this kind of a stress. Identification with the higher ideal leads to, or identification with the Supreme Brahman, with God, with Om Tat Sat, leads to peace of mind. Sri Shankaracharya has said, and I quote, even those acts that are not of the Sattvika type and are not perfect, are imperfect, turn out to be Sattvika and turn out to be perfect with the utterance of Om Tat Sat. Essentially, very simply, Bhagwan is saying here, think of the Supreme, think of the higher ideal, think beyond, and everything will turn out to be well. The more selfish the action, the more poorer the quality. Now, Bhagwan dwells on each of the three aspects of Om Tat Sat. Om, Tat, and Sat. We will see in the next coming verses. So we'll go to verse 24.
Tasmad omityudahritya
Tasmad omityudahritya
yajnadana tapakriyaha
yagyadana tapakriyaha
pravartante vedanuktaha
pravartante vidanoktaha
satatam brahmavadinam.
satatam brahmavadinam.
Tasmad omutyudahritya yajnadana tapakriyaha pravartante vedanuktaha satatam brahmavadinam.
To tasmad, therefore, because of this, because if you focus on the higher ideal, there is excellence in action resulting in perfection in result. Because of that, therefore, yajna dana tapa kriyaha, the action taken under yajna, dana, and tapa. We have studied what yajna, dana, and tapa are. The acts of yajna, dana, and tapa, pravartante, the first word of the second line, pravartante, are begun, satatam, always, brahmavadinam, by the followers of the Brahman. See, I told you, if you are not interested in spiritual progress, all this is irrelevant. By the followers of Brahman, they begin their actions. Vidhanoktaha, guided by the scriptures. Iti, with udahritya, the utterance of Om. So Bhagavan says, therefore, acts of yajna, dana, and tapa are always begun by followers of Brahman as guided by the scriptures with the utterance of Om. See, Om represents the transcendental, the pure self, the absolute, the infinite, the substratum upon which every change that we see in the world takes place. So any change requires a changeless background. That changeless, upon which all changes in creation takes place, that is Om. All the projections, like when we see a movie, there is a projection on the screen. All of this that is going on around us are projections. All that projection that takes place, we call it projection of the mind, but actually it is projection on that Om. That mind is that Om. That projection, all of that is Om. Om is the Supreme Brahman. And Bhagavan says, Om is uttered when acts of yajna, dana, and tapa are undertaken by the followers of Brahman. The absolute supremacy of the infinite and the divine awareness of this absolute supremacy of that infinite. The divine awareness of something that is much larger, something that is much beyond, in front of which we are, a tiny speck. That level of humility, when it comes into your mind, that awareness and that absolute supremacy together comprise Om. And to cherish this infinite and to cherish this absolute supremacy before we take action of performing devoted work, of dana, yajna, which is performing devoted work, dana, which is giving to others, and tapas. Tapas, of course, no English translation. All the 18 aspects that define tapas. When we do any of these, undertake any of these actions, before that, cherishing this supremacy, cherishing this infinite, cherishing this aspect which is there, the awareness which is there within us, that then leads to purpose and gives meaning to what we do. And how does it do that? See, the invocation of the divine, of that absolute, the concept of the absolute. When we invoke, we talked about invocation. I think the very first thing that we began Satsang, we spoke about invocation. When we invoke that absolute, it frees our mind from egocentric attachments. And then it leads to selflessness in action. If I feel that I'm playing a game and I hit a wrong shot, then, so I'm playing cricket and I say, oh my God, I hit a wrong shot. That stress of that thought is there before the next ball is being bowled. The chances are that one will get out if that happens. When that higher is invoked, when that higher is there in the mind, this aspect of I hit the wrong shot, or contrarily, hey, what a superb shot, I hit a 6. See how many times we see when you get beaten, you get, for those who follow cricket, right? When a bowler bowls a beautiful ball and you're not able to face it, the next ball, chances are you'll get out. Or when you hit a superb shot, a 6, the chances are the next ball you get out. How many times you just look at the game statistics, you'll find that it happens again and again and again. Entirely because of the identification with the ego. Invoking the Supreme prevents this from happening. Now, it is also said that no karma, whatever we do, no action is perfect. We have also seen this in the past through Bhagavad Gita. Now, this doesn't mean that we can eschew action, that we can stop taking action. Okay, can we just say that, okay, I will not act? No, we cannot do that. Bhagavaan himself has told us in chapter 3, you will be impelled into action by your sheer nature. And because action is unavoidable, the utterance of Om is said to remove all imperfections in the action. So if we take the view that all action is anyway imperfect, then invoking the name of the Supreme removes those imperfections from whatever we do. This is the very same principle that is represented by Vigneshwara or Ganesha, who guards Shiva's door, or Vishwaksena or Senadipati, who guards Vishnu's Vaikunta. People commence their activities by taking the names of these deities. These deities are representations of Om. Now in verse 25 of chapter 10, Bhagavaan had said, chapter 10 was Vibhuti Yoga. Bhagavaan is describing his Vibhuti, his expressions, his manifestations. And Sri Krishna had said that time, Giram Asmaikam Aksharam. Among words, I am the single syllable. This single syllable is Om. And indicates Bhagavaan. He says, I am that single syllable. It's the primordial sound. So Bhagavaan is talking about it in Vibhuti Yoga with respect to the sound among words, written or spoken. And the primordial sound from which all other sounds emerge is Om. The utterance of Om consists of the matras A, U and A in the beginning, U in the middle and in the end. And it signifies all, is indicative of everything, all of everything, everything of everything. Whatever it may be, words, letters, names, objects, beings, all of all. And it conveys the concepts of omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. This all-pervading, all-powerful, all-knowing aspect is Om. In the Big Bang theory itself, I had said this earlier also in Vibhuti Yoga. See, Om is supposed to be the cosmic sound through which the universe came into being. When science researched the sound of creation of the universe, it ultimately reached the sound of Om. That Om is reverberating. And as per Sanatana Dharma, this reverberating Om is there constantly in the universe. This hum is there in the universe. When you remove everything else, you hear this hum. And without this sound of Om, everything would cease to exist. When Om goes, nothing is there. Like I said, Om also has the matras or measurement. And behind Om, there is silence. Once Om is not there, nothing is there, which is silence. So measured Om and immeasurable Om. Thus, Om also represents both the Saguna Brahman and the Nirguna Brahman. The manifested aspect of Brahman and the unmanifested, the without guna aspect of Om. So Om is everything. How beautiful it is. And uttering Om before commencing anything leads to perfection. And now Bhagavaan continues.
Tadityanabhisandhaya
Tadityanabhisandhaya
Phalam yajnatapakriyaha
Alam yagyatapakriyaha
Dana kriyascha vividhaha
Daana kriyascha vividhaha
Kriyante moksha kangshibihi
Kriyante moksha kangshibihi
Tadityanabhisandhaya Phalam yajnatapakriyaha Dana kriyascha vividhaha Kriyante moksha kangshibihi.
Iti means thus. Iti, thus what? Thus uttering. Thus uttering, in this case, tad. Thus uttering tad, iti tad, thus uttering tad, anabhisandhaya, without aiming for, phalam, fruit. Yajna tapa kriyaha, the acts of yajna and tapa. And also, dana kriyascha and dana kriyaha, the acts of giving. Vividaha, various acts of giving. Kriyante are performed, kangshibihi, by the seekers of moksha, liberation. Thus uttering tat, without aiming for fruits, the acts of yajna and tapas and the various acts of dana or giving are performed by the seekers of liberation. See, tad indicates that from which everything has come, and also the eternal goal into which everything has to reach. All elements of creation ultimately want to reach this eternal goal. That from which everything has come, that to which everything has to reach, that is indicated by tad, the universal truth. That is what it is. See, we recently celebrated Independence Day. That was the independence of our nation, our country, our geography from a foreign power. That is what independence. And we celebrated that. What is the ultimate liberation? What is the ultimate independence? The ultimate independence is freedom from the bondages of our own body, mind, and intellect. Freedom from the bondages of our own guna. Transcending that is the ultimate independence or liberation. A human personality that is released from its own limitations, from its own bondages, is then able to seek moksha or liberation. And that is what Bhagavaan says, moksha kangshibihi. One who seek liberation. You can't seek liberation without removing the bondages. See, remember the example of Dr. Viktor Frankl, which I had given earlier. So he was imprisoned by the Germans during the Holocaust. He was tortured. And after a point in time, he could see that the more he associated with the torture that he was going through, the more impossible was it to get out of it. So over a period of time, he learned. Maybe he was lucky because he was a psychiatrist. But over a period of time, he learned to disassociate himself with what the body was going through. And I quote, he said, Dr. Viktor Frankl, and I quote, whatever you're doing to my body, not to me, unquote. So this is the height of liberation, where you let go of the bondages of your body, mind, and intellect. Things that are happening to you, you can't even feel. Swami Ramana Maharishi, he underwent cancer surgery, removal of a tumor without any anesthesia. He wanted to be fully aware. He was an extremely intelligent seeker wanted to know every little process that's going on. Once he accepted the disciples' request of going through surgery, then he wanted to know what was going on. And anesthesia, when the anesthesia came, he said, "This will make you unconscious." And Swamiji said, "No, I would like to be conscious while it's going on." And the surgeon, and here I quote the surgeon, he said that deep into the surgery, I noticed that the body in which I'm performing the surgery and this person who is looking at me with a very peaceful, calm face are two different entities. The third party could see the two different entities, not just like in the case of Viktor Frankl when he felt it. And he observed others. He observed other prisoners and he studied them. And he came to the conclusion that those who disassociated with body, mind, and intellect were able to bear the torture more. In this case, the surgeon, the third party in Swami Ramana Maharishi's case, he observed and he said that I could see two different entities there on the operating table. Such seekers, these kind of people, when you reach that level of perfection, they perform all their actions, their Yajna, Daana, and Tapas, without aiming for any fruit from such actions. It's one of the most difficult things not to aim for fruits of what we do. And at the same time, we know so many actions we do where we have no thought of the fruit. And we can ourselves judge whether the quality of action when we think of fruit versus when we don't think of fruit, which is better. Anabhisandhaya phalam, without any desire for fruit of action. When we work for ourselves, we do not think of our family. Or rather, let me take it the other way. When we work for our family, our self-interest is put in the back burner. When we work for a community, the family's interest is put in the background. When we work for the nation, the community's limited interests are disregarded. And when we work for the entire world, the nation's interests are forgotten or not considered. When we work for humanity, even the world's interests are not considered, not taken into account. And what we have learned from Bhagavad Gita is that ultimate redemption happens when human beings' interests are not taken into account. What does that mean? The human being, rather than working for the human being, puts the other elements of creation before self-interest. And when that is the true Yajna spirit, when you put other elements of creation before your own self-interest, and when that happens, that is when true redemption is achieved. That is when abhisandhaya phalam happens. This happens when Bhagavaan is remembered as Tat, as that ultimate truth or the ultimate goal. Now Bhagavaan goes to Sat, and Sat is used to indicate Bhagavaan, as is Om and Tat, and also some very interesting aspects that Bhagavaan teaches us about.
Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha.
Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha.
Sadityetat prayujyate.
Sadityetat prayujyate.
Prashaste karmani tata.
Prashaste karmani tatha.
Sat shabda partha yujyate.
Tat shabda partha yujyate.
Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha. Sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tata. Sat shabda partha yujyate.
Iti, thus, etat, the term sad. Sad implies sat. Sat or sad, both are the same. Paryujyate. Paryujyate means is used. The term sat is used sadbhave, in the sense of reality. Sadhu bhave, in the sense of goodness. Tatha, and also shabdaha, term, the term sat. See, sat shabdaha, that's the beauty of Sanskrit. Sat shabdaha means is split into sat and shabdaha. That term or the word shabdaha, yujyate, is used Prashaste karmani. Auspicious. Prashaste means auspicious. Karmani is actions. Karmani. Karmani is actions. So prashaste karmani, to indicate auspicious actions. O Partha, Bhagavan addresses Arjuna as Partha. So Bhagavan is saying, thus the term Sat is used in the sense of existential reality and in sense of goodness. And also the term Sat is used to indicate auspicious acts, O Partha. Sadbhave. Sadbhave, see, Bhagavan has explained to us in detail about how the ephemeral appears to be permanent. What is impermanent, what is transitory, appears to be permanent. He has multiple times he has told us, spoken to us about this. Sat is used to indicate this existential reality. What appears is also Bhagavan's manifestation. That existential reality is indicated by Sat, the expressions of Supreme Brahman. Having this power of existence, Sat also has the inherent power to bring about the fruits of action. See, Bhagavan keeps saying, don't think about the fruits. Why? Because the fruits of action is Sat. It is going to be there, whichever way. So not thinking of it is better because you will perform your action in a better manner. Sadhu bhave. Sadhu bhave, sadhu is good. So indicating all aspects of goodness in creation. And indicating all aspects of goodness promotes goodness. And not only does it promote goodness, it is also reformative. So Sat is used to indicate this goodness. And in the sense of being reformative, Sat also has the inherent power to make our actions good. So Sat indicates actions which are good and also makes our actions good. And Bhagavan says, Prashaste karmani. See, as much as there is good in our creation, there is also evil, bad in our creation. Bhagavan himself has indicated this, especially when he was describing Vibhuti Yoga, right? His expressions. He referred to multiple aspects of what is quote unquote bad or evil, and he said, this is also me, O Partha. So there is element of all in our existence, in our creation. Samsara or worldly life is wrought with goodness, is wrought with evil. I wouldn't say wrought with goodness, is abundant with goodness and wrought with evil. Right? And does it help to keep harping about the evil aspect? Oh my God, this is bad. Oh, this is evil all around me. That is, so much corruption, so much pollution, so much everything, nothing is good. Does it help in any way? Does it help harping about the negative aspects of our surroundings? Not really. Nor is it good to be pessimistic about worldly life. Oh, all this is bad, so anyway, what's the use? We have to make the best of what is there. We have to make the best of samsara. And actions that make the best of samsara are auspicious actions. Prashaste. Any action that makes the best of samsara is auspicious. These are auspicious actions. And Sat is used to indicate this auspiciousness. And Bhagavan continues, additionally, Sat is also used to indicate. We'll go to verse 27. Yajne
tapasi dane cha.
Yajne tapasi dane cha.
Sthiti saditi chochyate.
Sthiti saditi chochyate.
Karma chaiva tadartiyam.
Karma chaiva tadartiyam.
Sadityeva bhidhiyate.
Sadityeva bhidhiyate.
Yajne tapasi dane cha. Sthiti saditi chochyate. Karma chaiva tadartiyam. Sadityeva bhidhiyate.
Sthitihi is steadfastness, firmness. Yajye, in sacrifice. Cha, and tapasi, in tapas. Cha, and dane, in giving. Uchyate is called. Iti, thus. Sat, sad, or Sat. And Cha, even, Iva, even, Karma, action taken, Iti, for, Tadartiyam, such purposes. Va is also. Abhidiyate is named Sad as Sat. So Bhagavan is saying steadfastness in Yajna and in Tapas and in Dana is called Sat. And even action taken for such purposes is also named Sat. Let's see what this means. Okay. Steadfastness or Sthitihi comes when there is faith and devotion. Shraddha and Bhakti. When there is inherent Shraddha, when there is Bhakti, devotion, steadfastness automatically comes. Undertaking Yajna or Tapas or Dana with intense devotion and faith makes one steadfast in the pursuit. And this is termed as Sat. See, and any action undertaken to become steady in Yajna, Dana and Tapas is also termed as Sat. Karma chaiva tadartiyam. So Bhagavan is saying that the action itself is Sat. The means that are, the action that are adopted for that action is also Sat. The means to achieve the end. That is what he means when he says Karma chaiva tadartiyam. See, if my goal, one more favorite, these are some examples that I have thought about which are very relevant and help us link various concepts through the Bhagavad Gita. So one more of my favorite examples. If my goal is to lose weight, become trim and fit, then that goal is the end in itself. And that end in itself is also a pursuit. And for that purpose of becoming trim and fit, I sacrifice my sleep and go out in the cold to work out, to exercise. That action is means to achieve that end. That also is a pursuit. So similarly, if my goal is to excel or obtain merit in an examination, that is a pursuit. And sacrificing sleep, getting up early at 2 a.m. and studying is also an action. That also is a pursuit. So the action is a pursuit. The means to achieve that action is also a pursuit. Sat, described by the word Sat. So the attitude of Sat is bestowed to the means and to the end alike by Bhagavan. And in the ultimate sense, Yajna, Dana and Tapa are the means and the goal for attaining the supreme, which is the end goal. So acts performed for Yajna, Tapas and Dana, Yajna, Tapas and Dana by themselves, and any action taken for attaining the supreme. Each one of these and all of these are Sat. So, see, Bhagavan has described Om, Tat and Sat. And in themselves, they are so infinitely glorious. Then what about Om, Tat, Sat together? Infinite to the power of 3, or rather I'll say infinite to the power of infinite. But now a question will come. Okay, if this is the case, if Om Tat Sat, okay, great, I'll devote whatever I do to the higher ideal, everything will be perfect. If that is the case, can we do it without Shraddha? Can we simply attain our goal by dedicating our actions to the Supreme and not being bothered about faith at all? Remember, Arjuna's question is about faith. That is what he has asked. He has asked about people who have inherent faith who do not know the Shastra. Now, Bhagavan has told us that you dedicate everything, Om Tat Sat, and perfection will follow. So can I assume that, okay, even my inherent Shraddha is not required? So Bhagavan doesn't forget that connection. So in the last verse of the chapter, he emphasizes, he comes back to Shraddha. He actually comes back to Shraddha not being there. Let's see the last verse.
Ashraddhaya hutam dattam.
Ashraddhaya hutam dattam.
Tapastaptam kritam chayat.
Tapastaptam kritam chayat.
Asadityuchyate partha.
Asadityuchyate partha
न च तत्प्रीत्य नो इह
na cha tat pretya no iha.
अश्रद्धया हुतं दत्तं तपस्तप्तं कृतं च यत् असदित्युच्यते पार्था न च तत्प्रीत्य नो इह.
Yet, last word in the first line, yet, whatever. Hutam is sacrificed. Dattam is given. Cha and tapas taptam, practice of tapas, kritam, is performed. Ashraddhaya, without faith. Iti is uchyate, called. Asad, asat. O Partha. And tat, that is, it is. Na, not. Iha, here. Cha, and. No, not. Pretya, hereafter. So Bhagavan is saying, whatever is sacrificed, whatever is given, whatever is practiced in the form of tapas, if it is performed without faith, is called asat, O Partha. It is not here and not hereafter. Not N-A-U-G-H-T. Not means zero. That not. Not N-O-T. N-A-U-G-H-T. Zero. Nothing. It doesn't mean anything here or hereafter. Ashraddhaya hutam. Yajna without faith. Ashraddhaya dattam. Dana without faith. Ashraddhaya tapas taptam. Tapas without faith. Ashraddhaya yatkritam. Whatever is done without faith. Asat ityuchyate is called asat. So now we'll have one more sadhana for this chapter. But we will just make it the opposite way. Bhagavan has talked to us about what Ashraddhaya is. Let's say Shraddhaya hutam, Shraddhaya dattam, Shraddhaya tapas taptam, Shraddhaya yat kritam. So let's derive from it for our sadhana. Perform yajna, perform dana, perform tapa, and perform whatever you perform, whatever you do with Shraddha. That is also a sadhana for us. So we have two sadhanas in this chapter. Why? Because Bhagavan says, na chat tat pretya no iha. If you do it without faith, it is not of zero value here and hereafter. Performed without Shraddha, everything is useless here and hereafter. Pretya means hereafter, in spirit. Pretya also means in spirit, hereafter. So Bhagavan had said, remember in the beginning, Shraddhamayo yam purushaha, a person consists of one's faith. And he had also said, Yo yat shraddha sa eva saha. What one's faith is, one is surely that. Now he is saying that one without faith is a not, zero, here and hereafter, in body and in spirit. So Shraddha is indispensable for either enjoyment of the earthly pleasure, samsara, or for attainment of divine plenitude through spiritual pursuit. Whether our goal is to enjoy this world or our goal is to seek what is beyond this world, Shraddha is indispensable. Faith is indispensable. One who lacks Shraddha gets neither. Neither the temporary joy nor the deep happiness that touches our core and is everlasting. It's like machines. See, machines make no progress for them. They work, and machines work very hard. But do they gain anything through that work that they do? All that happens to a machine when it works it wears out. A person without faith is a machine. All that will happen to a person without faith is the person will wear out. Whereas with faith, that one divine gift is faith, Shraddha. With that, the human being makes progress, both in the material world and in spiritual pursuit. So we have seen that we must act. Bhagavan has told us, action is not under our control. It comes through our nature, through guna. Act we must. The action can be stupid or tamasic. It can be selfish or rajasic. It can be selfless or sattvic. Add Shraddha to that action or faith to that action, it results in spiritual progress. and then add Om Tat Sat to that action, which means dedicate the action to the Supreme with faith. When we do that, we attain perfection. So with that spirit of Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Saditi,
Om Tat Saditi,
Om Tat Saditi,
Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su,
Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su,
Upanishatsu,
Upanishatsu,
Brahma Vidyayam,
Brahma Vidyayam,
Yoga Shastre,
Yoga Shastre,
Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade,
Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade,
Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yogo Nama,
Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yogo Nama,
Saptadashodhyayaha.
Saptadashodhyayaha. Hari Om, Shri Krishna. So we'll revise the sadhanas for each of the chapter before we conclude today. So go chapter by chapter. So for every chapter, we have a sadhana or a practice that we should, even if we don't follow anything else in that chapter, at least this much we should remember and follow and try to link with our day-to-day life. That is the sadhana. So for chapter 1, our sadhana was watch for shoka and moha, remove them, and also seek help. So actually the seeking help comes in chapter 2, not in chapter 1. The verse 7 of chapter 2. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhavaha. So Arjuna says that I realize that I have karpanya dosha because of shoka and moha. And he says, Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. I am your shishya, I am your student. Please tell me what I need to do. So watch for shoka and moha, that is shoka, sorrow, moha, delusion, and remove them. Seek help if required. That is the sadhana for chapter 1. Chapter 2, verse 48. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Maintain equipoise in extremities. The world has extremities. Pendulum swings from one end to the other. We have to maintain our equipoise. Chapter 3, verse 19. Samachara. Perform actions with utmost devotion, dedication, and pursuit for perfection. Chapter 4. Karmanya karmaya paschet. Not being the doer while doing. So we are doing, but not being the doer. How? By seeing inaction in action. Inaction, one word, in action. By seeing that. We have to practice that. Chapter 5. Padma patram ivam bhasa. Just like a lotus petal is untouched by the water on which it is, similarly, be untouched by worldly experiences while being in contact with them. Verse 10 of chapter 5. Chapter 6, verse 30. Mam pashyati sarvatra. Sees me everywhere. Sarvam cha mai pashyati. And sees everything in me. Sees me, Bhagavaan, everywhere. And sees everything in Bhagavaan. Practice this, especially when in meditation. Chapter 7, we had two sadhanas. First one was verse 12. Natvaham teshu te mai. Indeed, I am not in them. They are in me. So this awareness of the pure consciousness being untouched in the midst of varied thoughts, that we have to be aware of. And the second one was verse 7. Mai sarvamidam protam sutre maniganaiva. All the variety is strung in me, in Bhagavaan, just like gems in a string. So Bhagavaan is the sutra, and all the gems are elements of creation, which are strung in the sutra. Chapter 8, verse 7. Sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yudhyacha. Sarveshu kaleshu, at all times, every moment of your life. Ma manusmara, remember me. Yudhyacha, perform your activities, perform your duties. Chapter 9, verse 27. Yat karoshi tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do that as an offering to me. Bhagavaan says, I don't want anything from you. Don't please give me, build temples for me, give me Daana. I don't need anything. Whatever you do, offer it to me. Chapter 10, verse 41. Yadyad vibhuti mat satvam mama tejom sasham bhavam. Whatever glorious experience which you see around you is a manifestation of a small part of my splendor. Chapter 11, Nimitta Matram Bhava. Be an instrument in his hands. Take up the role of being an instrument to carry out Bhagavan's plans. Verse 33 it was. And for chapter 11, we had sadhana for entire Bhagavad Gita also. Verse 55. Mat karma krita, does actions for Bhagavan. Mat paramaha, with Bhagavan as the supreme goal. Mad bhaktaha, devoted to Bhagavan. Sangha varjita, free from, devoid of attachment. Nirvairaha sarva bhuteshu, without any enmity towards all creatures, because all creatures are created by Bhagavan only, without any enmity or without any hatred for them. Chapter 12, verse 20. Paryupasate dharmyamritam yathoktam. Follow the immortal dharma as declared by Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Chapter 13, verse 34. Kshetra kshetragyayor evam antaram viduhu. Discern the difference between kshetra and kshetragya, the field and the knower of the field. And discerning this difference, bhuta prakriti moksham. Know the means of liberation from prakriti. Chapter 14, verse 26. Avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate mam. With no other thought, avyabhicharena, no other thought. Unswavering devotion, bhakti yogena, serve me. Sevate mam, serve Bhagavan. Chapter 15, our sadhana is recite the entire chapter, because chapter 15 itself is a shastra. Chapter 16, verse 22. Etair vimuktah kaunteya tamo dwarais tribhir naraha. Become free of the three gateways to hell by conquering desire, anger and greed. And how do you conquer desire and anger and greed? Through self-control, compassion and giving. Desire conquered through self-control, anger conquered through compassion, and greed conquered by giving. Overcome kama, krodha and lobha through damaha, daya and dana. Chapter 17, verse 17. So chapter 17, for this chapter we have two sadhana. Verse 17. Shraddhaya paraya trividham tapas taptam. Yuktaihi aphala kankshibhi. So practice that threefold tapas, trividham tapas taptam. Practice that with utmost faith. Paraya shraddhaya, with utmost faith. Yuktaihi aphala kankshibhi. Steadfast in not desiring any fruit. Satvika tapas, that is what it is. And if we can't do that, let us practice any kind of tapas that Bhagavan has taught us. The 18 kinds of tapas that Bhagavan has taught us. And verse 28, which is more derived sadhana for us. Shraddhaya hutam, shraddhaya dattam, shraddhaya tapas taptam, shraddhaya yatkritam. Perform yajna, dana, tapas and whatever is done with shraddha. So these are our sadhana. Let's conclude with that.
We'll repeat today's verses.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll repeat verses and then conclude.
Chapter 17, verse 23 to 28. Om Tatsaditi Nirdeshaha Brahmanastrividasvitaha Brahmanaste Kavibhascha Yajnascha Vihita Pura Tasmad Umutyudahritya Yajnadana Tapakriyaha Pravartante Vedanuktaha Sadatam Brahmavadinam Tadityanavisandhaya Phalam Yajnatapakriyaha Dana Kriyascha Vividaha Kriyante Moksha Kankshibhihi Sadbhave Sadhubhave Cha Saditye Tat Prayujyate Prashaste Karmani Tata Satshabda Partha Yujyate Yajne Tapasi Dane Cha Sthiti Saditi Stocyate Karma Chaiva Tadartiyam Sadityeva Vidhiyate Ashraddhayahutam Dattam Tapastaptam Kritam Chayat Asadityuchyate Partha Nachatat Pretyano Iha. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Shraddhatre Vibhaga Yogo Nama Saptadashodhyayaha. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om, thank you. We'll do Aarti and then we'll do question answers.
Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Maya Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Harihi Kamala Viharini. Harihi Kamala Viharini. Sundara Supunite. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Karma Sumarma Prakashini. Kama Sakti Hara. Maya Kama Sakti Hara. Tattva Jnana Vikashini. Tattva Jnana Vikashini. Vidya Brahma Para. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Nishchala Bhakti Vidayini. Nirmala Malhari. Maya Nirmala Malhari. Sharana Rahasya Pradayini. Sharana Rahasya Pradayini. Sabhaviti Sukari. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Raga Dvesha Vidarini. Karini Mood Sada. Maya Karini Mood Sada. Bhava Bhayaharini Tarini. Bhava Bhayaharini Tarini. Paramananda Prada. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Asura Bhava Vinashini. Nashini Tamarajani. Maya Nashini Tamarajani. Daivi Sadgunadayini. Daivi Sadgunadayini. Hari Rasika Sajini. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Samata Tyaga Sikhavani. Hari Mukha ki Bani. Maya Hari Mukha ki Bani. Sakala Shastra ki Swamini. Sakala Shastra ki Swamini. Shrutiyo ki Rani. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Daya Sudha Bharsavani. Matu Kripa ki jai. Maya Matu Kripa ki jai. Hari Pada Prema Daan Kar. Hari Pada Prema Daan Kar. Apno Kar Lijai. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Maya Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Harihi Kamala Viharini. Harihi Kamala Viharini. Sundara Supuniti. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita.
Hari Om. Thank you. Any comments, thoughts, questions?
Srini, I have a question, but it's can you hear me? My connection is very bad today. Yeah.
Yes, and hear you.
Yeah, it is still to the tapas. You know, you mentioned the 18 types of tapas, and I don't know if I just overheard it, but Is there, does Bhagavad Gita mention also tapas in the sense like, you know, physical exercise, I mean asanas now? Because for yoga, it's actually the first tapas. It's not a very important tapas, but it's, you know, it says it's the burning of the impurities, and it's the commitment to the physical practice, which helps them to the mind to be quiet and reflect and so on. And I haven't heard it here. I don't know if I didn't understand or.
Right. Yeah. So here Bhagwan talks about Shariram Tapas, which pertains to the physical body. We saw that in the last satsang, right? I think it was the last satsang or previous, whichever. I think it was last satsang. Shariram, where he Deva Dvija Guru Pragya, the worship of the Devas, the twice born, who are the knowers of the Brahman, the Guru, and the people who are knowledgeable, who have attained spiritual knowledge. That is one. Then he talks about cleanliness and Arjavam, which is the straightforwardness, and Brahmacharyam, which is reveling in the Brahman. So, and I've covered only 7, no? There's one more, yeah. So yeah, he doesn't specifically mention yoga or as in Ashtanga Yoga, you know, in that, if that is your question.
Yeah, because for the, you know, for the yogis, it's not the most important, but it's, I would say, the first tapas, because it's at the grossest level, you know, and it's maybe the most easier one because it's very tangible. So that's why I was wondering if it's mentioned there at all in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. And I lost the first half of your answer, but I will listen to the recording. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? So we'll start chapter 18 next week. Next week is 27th. I'm not very sure if I can do satsang on 17th and 24th. 17th I definitely cannot. 24th I'm not sure. So there may be a 2-week gap on 17th and 24th of September. I'm actually planning. I firmed up a trip to Alaska with some trekking and some touring in Alaska for 10 days. So those 2 weekends follow there. And I think connectivity and all that is going to be pretty hard there. So just advance notice for that. And of course, we'll start chapter 18 next week. Anyone has any thoughts, comments, or questions? Okay, if no other comments or thoughts, questions, we'll conclude today and meet next Saturday. We commence chapter 18. Thank you all. Hari Om.